Hi, and welcome back to AppSecCon 2022. Next up, we've got a panel discussion about building a winning AppSec business case. We've got three speakers, Maria Schwenger, who is a partner at IBM in the cloud native business practice. We've got Jyothi Chayulu, who is Director of Cybersecurity at Fidelity Investments, focusing on DevSecOps, and myself, Mark Lambert, a VP of Products at ArmorCode. We're going to be talking about what you need to do to build a winning AppSec business case. Let's go ahead and see how the conversation went. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session, Building a Winning AppSec Business Case. My name is Mark Lambert. I'm joined by Maria and Jyothi, and we are really excited about this topic. So actually, let's jump straight in. Maria, do you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. So yes, the security budget is always a very hot topic, sometimes hot potato if not people don't want to take on it. And so there are usually more open questions rather than answers. So today we will try to demystify how to build a winning AppSec budget. What is special about this panel is that we will approach the topic budget from three different perspectives. I'm a leader in a consulting organization, and I will represent a consulting services point of view. We work with clients to help them to reduce the AppSec risk with their budget constraints, and often we assist them to build the right budget and to build it fast. Jyothi leads security assurance within platform engineering at Fidelity Investments, other words, DevSecOps, and she will speak from point of view of a customer working with tools and vendors and services. Mark, on the other side, we'll talk from a vendor perspective. How a vendor designs solutions to be priced competitively, and how, in general, all vendors can aid their clients into their budget planning exercise. And while most of the companies today realize the importance of AppSec, it's still not easy to get buy-in for our budget. Why it's so challenging to secure executive buy-in, to get the resources, the financial support that we need for AppSec? So that's the million-dollar question that we're going to try to answer today. And let's start, of course, with the definition of what is a winning budget for AppSec and how we can build a winning or successful AppSec business case. Mm-hmm. Jyothi, from customer perspective, how is your DevSecOps budget designed? What are the main components? How do you rely on the AppSec vendors or services like Mark or me for that as well?
Thank you, Maria, and thank you for the opportunity. The most important aspect to designing and implementing an effective budget is really to help the senior leadership team understand why, behind the what and how. Why helps you identify the purpose behind the budget. When the why is strong, how and what get easy. So how do you define a strong why? And how strongly you define it makes a winning AppSec budget and a program. So consider, why would you need an AppSec program? And create your strategic roadmap and execution that are the foundation for asking a winning AppSec budget. So for example, web applications, they are the front door of corporations. How do you secure your front door? Through an AppSec program. Apps are a top attack vendor. The great complexity of infrastructure makes web application servers a target for attackers. How do you solve that? Through a winning AppSec program. Breaches, very expensive. So you should be using data-driven decisions to drive a winning AppSec program and ask for a winning AppSec budget. And regarding your question on services and tools, an important aspect. So in a company like Fidelity Investments with very strong platform engineering solutions, what we do is we help the enterprise teams understand how to build enterprise technology solutions where security is invisible. So then it becomes DevOps, not DevSecOps, because security is built in and invisible. So the key aspect lies in designing resilient architecture and resilient technology solutions where security moves left of the development pipeline. Security is automated, and security is configured as a convenience to developers and auditable. So when security is built into a pipeline, it becomes independent of specific AppSec vendors or specific servers. So security becomes more of an enabler. It becomes a customer value proposition. It's more like a design, like a black box. It's developers use it without knowing the specifics of how to use it. So when we solve for the problem and we make it enabler, not a blocker, and we provide data-driven decisions, that's how we get a winning AppSec budget approved. So Mark, what would you say?
Well, you covered a lot of it there, Jyothi, and I think I'll reiterate, it's about aligning the program with the business objectives, the things that the business care about. And you really need to understand what AppSec success looks like in that type of scenario. So if you can align to the business objectives, right? So I've got my web application. My business objective is that I have 0 breaches. I want to be able to increase software delivery. Well, the only way you're going to be able to increase that software delivery is by building in an AppSec program where, as you say, security just becomes part of the process. Mm-hmm. And then if you can quantify that success, that really helps you really understand the goals of the program and align that with any potential ROI. So yeah, the key is aligning to the business objectives, not just saying, I want to build an AppSec program. You have to align it to why the business cares.
Mm-hmm.
So on my side, as a consulting practice leader, my goal is to provide high services in the area of AppSec at the lowest cost. And I need to ultimately fit into customers' budget. And it's kind of complicated sometimes because my cost is part of the client budget, but in the same time, part of my project might be variety of vendors, variety of tools, variety of pieces that I need to piece together into a solution to deliver to a client. So I have to keep track of the expenses of multiple vendors that are included in my project. And that's why the secret for my winning budget, first of all, I need to have a clear business impact for my SOW every single step. And I should provide a clear justification. But also, I always stay concentrated on the outcome related to the business outcome. So my advice to you guys, if you have a lot of vendors that are part of your budget, AppSec budget, please work in close collaboration with them, take their help, keep them responsible for the outcome, but keep this one in a holistic approach. And so with this, we can move to the next question. It came out from our first answers that app strategy is very important to ensure building a winning budget. And one other interesting question, who should pay for insurance and for security, right? So what is your experience on that, guys?
For my side, I would say AppSec budgets really depend on how your organization is structured. It sometimes becomes a shared responsibility, again, depending on how your organization is structured. It is a shared responsibility between a central application security organization and every business unit. So some aspects like awareness programs, training programs, security champions programs, etc., could be a central security organization. But every business unit gets charged back for certain costs related to vendor tools that you mentioned, Maria. And it also depends on the technology used, the size of the development team. So every business unit could have different sized development teams and how they're engaged with technology. So ultimately, enterprise risk and enterprise security teams build a strong case for reducing the threat landscape, for building a brand that identifies with strong security foundation. And we use that as a customer value proposition in the market. So again, I say security should be an enabler to the business value and not a blocker. What would you say, Mark?
Yeah, and I think you touched upon it really well. Is that when I look at application security, I think about who is really responsible for the success of that program, and it is a cross-team collaboration, right? It's the AppSec professionals within the security team, and then it's the development professionals within the development team. So facilitating that cross-team communication and collaboration is critical, and also therefore there should be some shared budget. Because if it's done right, both teams benefit, and certainly, if you think about an AppSec to development team ratio, the size of the development team does correspond to the size of the workload that's coming through the ecosystem, right? So there is a direct correlation there. So I definitely believe strongly that it's a shared budget. I agree with you as well, is that it is sized based upon the development organization, and I often focus on productivity with that sizing and that cost justification. Now, productivity is a double-edged sword, because I could say I could make you more productive with just giving you a nicer chair. But, really what I'm saying here is you want to focus on the productivity as it relates to the AppSec program and the success of that AppSec program, which again goes to the business success that we talked a few moments ago. So productivity is a great way of demonstrating that ROI in a cross-team way, because it's productivity of the AppSec team working with the volume of data, but then it's also the productivity of the development teams with their remediation process as well. So Maria, what's your experience from a services side?
You guys wouldn't believe in how many cases we need to help the customers to bridge the silos within their organization in terms of budget, in terms of deliverables. And we, again, assessing the risk, eliminating, mitigating the risks at the lowest effort, clear business impact. So these are some of the major topics that came also from your responses. Now, one thing that I wanted to summarize in terms of who pays for security, because this is a lot of people ask this question. We see different approaches with different companies. In some cases, development and security would share the responsibility for the budget. Lately, we've seen that the CISO office sponsors the tooling, and the development organization will pick up some of the cost for training and development work, especially in the organizations when we have a specialized product security team. We also see this concept of chargeback, and this is especially when the budget is at the CIO level. And we also see another big collaboration in the budgets between the security champion programs, which is part of the development team. But in reality, this is an extension of the AppSec teams. So with this short summary, let's move to another very key topic, KPIs. Now, I have seen so many AppSec programs fail because they cannot demonstrate a quick and tangible return on investments in relation to the risk mitigation. So how do we plan to measure our success? How do we keep our success visible? What commitments did we make to the business? How we keep our commitments to the business? These are all KPIs, right? So let's talk, what are some good KPIs that can help us in getting rapid approval of our AppSec budget?
Absolutely. So for me, I would say, first of all, let's create a foundation. Let's define the success of the program related to your company's risk landscape and risk appetite. Then you go back and measure, my company can take this much risk, and here's how I would reduce risk at an enterprise level. So you could measure the quality of deployments. Something also that you could look at is failure rate. How healthy are the applications that you're deploying to production? So how would you measure all this? Again, the basis of a foundational AppSec program would require training programs. You would have some kind of a SAST, DAST that also covers SCA, which is, takes care of your open source flaws as well as penetration testing. And the key would be to integrate this security at all stages of your SDLC pipeline. But specifically, your question was, Maria, to what KPIs and examples can you provide? So one example that I would think of is, let's say you have a SAST tool that looks for your static application testing tool. So it would look at your flaws. So you could look at the flaws at your development style and look at how many flaws are you catching, policy failing flaws. Again, you would set enterprise policies based on your top flaws. So if a cross-site scripting flaw is your top flaw, you would create a policy that would fail applications based on that. But flaw density is a very good KPI because it is the number of policy failing flaws per 1 MB of code. So let's say in a year at the beginning of January, you have a flaw density of X. You put an event, which would be a training or something specific, and then you measure your flaw density. Has it gone from X minus 2? Is there a delta? So what's your baseline and how has that changed? So that's how you would measure like flaw density. Training adoption, for example, you have an annual training program, distribute that through different business units. Again, measure flaw density with that training program. Is a business unit at 99% adoption engagement? Is it 50%? Go back and tie this KPI to your flaw density KPI. Similarly, you could look at another flaw would be the top common flaws or critical and high flaws based on OWASP vulnerabilities. Again, specific to your organization. So you could be a SQL injection or cross-site scripting. So you could record that as a KPI through, again, various stages of SDLC. So you could say, is a penetration test that is done post-production catching the same flaw, or is it catching a different kind of a business flaw? If it's catching the same flaw, was it missed earlier in your pipeline? And another very important KPI would be vulnerability analysis. So your mitigation versus remediation. How many are false positives that are getting mitigated? How many are remediated? Overall flaw reduction over time. And again, very key important aspect is to tie your KPIs together. So introduction of an AppSec program, training, etc., and based on that. And then you can also check on based on your organization's compliance and standards. If you have a policy that states you cannot release code to production with any critical and high flaw, are you complying to that policy? What is the percentage of that? So KPIs would, again, tying back to my first point, is very, very important, but it's also customized to your appetite, to your risk appetite, and to your risk reduction for your organization.
That's awesome, Jyoti. Thank you so much. So you basically kind of outlined 3 major areas: cost reduction, risk mitigation, time to value. And one advice that I also have always to my clients is use the details that Jyoti just provide. Don't stay high level. High level justification never really works. With that, let's talk about the one other very important topic that it's not fair to close the conversation if we don't share some ideas on how the AppSec leaders are prepared for reduced budgets. With the current economic situation, some are more positive, some more negative, but many leaders are worried about budget cuts. And that can be a little bit painful, overwhelming process if you have this situation. So, Mark, what are some of the techniques for cost control and optimization that you guys as a vendor can provide?
Yeah. So I think, in the interest of time, I'll keep it down to just really quickly 2. First thing is productivity of the team. If we can automate as many processes as possible, not just automate the generation of data, but automate the processes that go along with that, and then programs that help us scale the impact of our team. So we talked about security champions very briefly today. That's a great program for scaling the success without having to scale the team massively. The next is look at next best alternatives. So you might have to rationalize your tool chain. And if you do that, what you really need is a process that'll actually bring those tools together and actually give you a consistent process. One client that I was talking to a couple of months ago said, tools are interchangeable, process is king. And I really love that phrase because that really does talk to the fact that you can really have a bit of flexibility in what your landscape looks like. And again, next best alternative, there are some great open source tools out there, not as high fidelity as a commercial tool for sure, doesn't have all the bells and whistles. But if you're having to cut back in certain areas, that might be something to consider. So,
thank you, Mark. So in conclusion, guys, let's share with our audience a few key takeaways. I will start with 2 bullets, which surprisingly are not technical, but I think they're very important. When talking about security, we need to prove that every penny spent on security is going for enablement of the business. I think this is very important. Like Jyoti mentioned, the security is enabler, protector, not a showstopper for the business. And this is across the entire SDLC. And the second point I'll make is building trust. If you want your budget to be approved with ease, and I need to have confidence in your ability to deliver, right? That will be an easy conversation. So my advice is invest in demonstrating your expertise, building the trust on your delivery and capabilities, and put equally efforts there, like if you build your budget. Jyoti?
Oh, I would say the most important aspect to designing and implementing an effective budget is really help teams and leadership understand the why, use data-driven decisions behind the what and how. I would say help enterprise teams understand how to build enterprise technology solutions where security is invisible. And how do you make security invisible? Through incorporating security automated assessments through various stages of SDLC, such as building, testing, packaging, delivering, deployment. And then you make sure that you're automating and you're using configurable, very easy to use security checklists at the security SDLC gates. So by architecting in agile, automated development and deployment CI/CD pipelines, they can be aided by automated tools that automate security assessments from build phase to deployment phase, operations phase. And that's how you make security automated, auditable, easily configured, and invisible. And overall, very effective.
Yeah, I think you said it great, Jyoti. And I know we're at the end of time. So, this was a great conversation. There's a lot more we could have talked about. The only thing I will add very briefly is make sure you're able to demonstrate the success, because that's how you're going to get your budgets for year 2 and 3, and how you're going to be really building some resiliency into the budget. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching this session. We've really enjoyed it. We've enjoyed this experience as well. So let's continue the chat within the chat system.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Ciao.